Yeah, nice. Okay, we got a wonderful turnout here. It is 2 p.m., so I want to thank everybody for joining this afternoon remotely. My name is Anne Stefanik, and I'm founder and CEO of Canopy Studios, and today we're going to be talking about how to work remotely and foster a happy, balanced life. I was mentioning as we just joined on the call is that I gave this talk a long time ago, and then I revamped it and kind of reimagined it to be not just about like tips and tricks about how to work from home, but actually like how to actually be happy and enjoy it. So I had originally submitted this to Stanford, and then I pivoted and I wanted to do another one, and I decided at the last minute to ask if they could include us in this session because it becomes now, it's very timely as everybody in the higher ed space is working from home right now. So we'll go ahead and get started. You're welcome to use the chat or even just, let me know. I'm not the host, so I don't think I'll see your raised hand. So either physically raise your hand or just give me an interruption. We can have a dialogue at any time. We have 45 minutes scheduled today. And then I do have another talk coming up at 3 about how to make your site last for 5 years. So we'll run this a little long if you want to do any Q&A. Okay, so just as a heads up that this is a QR code. So if you want to LinkedIn me, you can actually just put that up too and take a picture of it, and it'll open me up on LinkedIn. But my job is I'm very passionate about helping people with their websites, and I make websites easy to understand and effective. Canopy is my agency, started it and really put the gas pedal on the metal in 2013. And we take care of the whole life cycle of the website. We do builds ground up, but our specialty is in support and really taking someone else's code and nurturing it. So my question for you is, usually I ask, do you work from home? But of course, yes, you do. Of course you do right now. Everybody's working from home. But I imagine at one point in time, you probably said, oh, I give so much to work from home. It must be so relaxing. You can work from anywhere. You have a flexible schedule. You can wear what you want. But really, if you're just starting to work from home, you may feel this, you may not, but it might be kind of isolating. Circumstances impending this, making this a little harder, but it also be kind of demotivating. And working from home, if you're not careful, it can actually be physically damaging. It can be stressful, and that stress is really transferable. And what's more intense is that this attention economy has made working more and more intense. So workload is generally up. There's this expectation of real-time responses. 94% of service professionals put in over 50 hours a week, many of that group clocking 65 hours a week. And that doesn't include our 20 to 25 hours checking the phone. Sadly, that's us. We are the professional service workers. We also don't get uninterrupted time. Our team members, our workers, our coworkers, it's on average that in state of the work from home study in 2019 was that workers averaged 2 hours and 48 minutes of productive time. And 33% of work is done on the weekends. It's also really interesting that while we don't get any 30 minutes of interrupted time, it's well established that only 1% to 2% of the population can actually multitask. Most of us spend our times bouncing from task to task, or we try to make up that time through multitasking. I think there was a stat like on average, we use 56 different apps, and we switch between them nearly 300 times a day. So knowing all of this, there's also this strange, weird badge of honor. If you're in the Bay Area, it's like, oh, I didn't sleep this weekend, I worked so hard. That's really unhealthy. Sleeping, once you work past a certain amount of time, your work becomes impaired. You're more likely to feel depressed and stressed. It's harder to communicate and get things done. And as I mentioned before, stress is transferable. You're stressed at work and you go home and you take that, you give it to your clients. So I want to just stop for a minute, people, and remembering that we all want to have a happy and calm day at work. And when I love yoga, and I find that through that, I'm always seeking balance. So I really like this quote, where happiness is not a matter of intensity, but of balance and order and rhythm and harmony. So how do we actually create that balance? This really it's a two-way street, and it requires everyone to connect with the mission and each other. And it's such an interesting time that right now, when we're in this, it takes really two to tango. So here are some best practices as an employee. So as now you're a work from home person, when I talk to my Canopians and ask them what are some of the things that you love to do that helps you stay healthy and sane, is I love the first one, which is pants aren't optional. As in, get dressed every morning when you wake up. Don't work all day in your pajamas. You can dress in a skirt. Don't worry, you can wear a skirt too. But the point is that you're going to feel a lot healthier and happier when you wake up. It's also really important for you to structure your time for lunch. Grabbing a sandwich and sitting down at your desk again is not a structured lunch. That creates more stress. If you can take some time, pack a lunch the night before, just like you were going to the office, and then at that time when you would have lunch, turn off your computer, turn off your phones, take your sandwich, and go and sit somewhere else than your desk. Even if you're currently living in a place where you don't have a backyard, just going and sitting in another room is going to help create some division of space. I also believe that it feels really good to get up and move around. So while on your lunch break, if you have the possibility to, do a little walk, circumstances pending right now, I love this mantra of let's take 1,000 steps after eating. Another thing is that it's really important right now for you to create a workspace and set some time boundaries. What I find is that a lot of the staff, if they have never worked at home before, that they try to work in their bedroom, or maybe they try to work at the kitchen desk. And ultimately that hurts. It hurts to sit on your bed all day and work. It hurts to sit at the kitchen table without elbow support. So you want to kind of think of how can you create a workspace that fosters productivity and allows you to put it away at the end of the day. I have two office spaces. I have this one in my living room, which is front and center. There's my dog. But then I also have a space in my kitchen corner where I can go. And that way I divide up my day sometimes into two chunks, and it makes me feel like I can actually come back to my living room at night and not feel crazy. I also use another device to play. So if you have your work computer and that you actually, you like to be online at night, and when you used to come home, you'd have a personal device. Now you're being forced because work hasn't caught up with the machines. It might be helpful to use your iPad or your Kindle. Maybe sign out of all of your, your GChat and your Slack at 6 p.m. That's totally cool. It's really also important to create space to end. You may have noticed that Wi-Fi is like the bloodline to working remote. You need to have good Wi-Fi, or as my grandma used to call it, Wi-Fi. That was just so cute. But if you're going to decide to work in a new place, sometimes that you want to make sure they actually have Wi-Fi. Some cafes no longer offer Wi-Fi because they don't want people to work there all day. You show up thinking you're going to get a couple of work hours in, they don't have Wi-Fi, you're going to miss that call, everything gets really stressful. Now, we're not necessarily going to cafes at this time, but you probably notice your home internet is just chugging because everybody in the world is on it. So you'll notice that internet is something that you need to do. And I always tell my team members, you're welcome to go and travel and live wherever you want. But really call the hotel, ask them to send you a speed test, find out what their internet is before you decide to go and live in a different country. Now that's not really happening right now, but there's some great tests out there that you can just send to the hotel person. Another one that I find very helpful to creating space for your head during the work from home time is to bookend your day. So what I mean about that is start your day with a routine. What I like to do is I like to get dressed, put on pants, and then take my dogs for a walk. It gets everybody out of the house. We go for a nice fresh walk. I come home, I'm entering the house, I go to work. Other people, you've got children duties. They can really bookend your day quite nicely. Right now, they're all over the place. I understand that. but even creating a little ritual. When you're used to driving to an office and driving home from an office, you have that commute time to let your mind process the day and allow brilliant solutions to come up and just to let it all, close. One of the biggest things I find with team members is that in our virtual world, we have these things called loops, open loops. And what happens is you open up a browser tab and I get called away. And then I open up another tab and I'm getting called away. And a Slack chat's coming up. They need to, and then I'm over here. I'm over here. We end up with like 5 or 6 open loops within a matter of 15 seconds. Our brain does not do well with open loops. It gets stressed out. It likes to close loops. So it's nice to create space at the beginning and the end of your day to close as many loops as possible. So you're not scheduled till the max and you just stop at 5 p.m. and walk away. Create space for you to go ahead and send those follow-up emails, to reply back to those Slack chats. And by creating a little bit of routine to close those and then creating some space away from it, it helps digest the day a little bit better. And if all else fails, get a dog. They're really good when you work from home. They will keep you busy. They will annoy you at times, but they will love you unconditionally. And I have to say that as you create more of a remote culture, a lot of you probably leverage Slack. We'd encourage you to continue to leverage Slack, but to open up some new channels to create connection. One of the channels we have at work is called Fitness and Health. And what the Fitness and Health channel is a place where if people want to get moving, we put together a little what we call a work week hustle. And they're just stepping challenges, or we'll do push-up challenges. And then a whole bunch of us just sit there and watch them and be like, wow, you guys are all so active, go you. But the point is that we create space where we can encourage movement. I also think like basic stretching is incredibly powerful for us that work from home. Our hips are tight from just sitting. So a basic way that you can just get some relief is to do a forward fold. It's one of the easiest yoga practices. It's one of the best, most restorative things. Putting all that blood in your brain and then flipping back up and flushing it all out, it's amazing what that does for clarity and peace of mind. So there's lots of different ways that you can stretch. I believe almost every single YouTube channel that has yoga on it, or there's lots of yoga providers that are doing this very low donations, but stretching it out really can help create space for a break. I also highly recommend cutting your screen time. One way is just to decide that maybe it's, just 2 hours every night before you go to bed, you turn it off. I'm a real big fan of Mel Robbins. She's a girl boss kind of motivational speaker, but I learned something from her that was just absolutely wild, is that, when we keep our phone beside us at night, people legitimately in this world wake up and check their phone in the middle of the night while they're sleeping. It's just too much. So the phone can be one of your biggest productivity killers. I highly encourage you to leave the phone outside of your bedroom when you sleep. And when you wake up, take back your morning. It might be before your children are up. It might be while they're up. But what's important here is that you carve out a little bit of time for yourself every morning. And especially now, we have to make sure that we still take care of ourselves so we can take care of the people in our community. But I know that what I really love is when I get up in the morning and I can do 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of learning, and 20 minutes of movement. It's an hour to myself. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's a 5-minute meditation, 5-minute learning, and 5 minutes of exercise. But I try to always honor the smallest component of 15 minutes, or if I have the luxury of a full hour. But that allows me to start my day centered, to start my day grounded. And I really believe that in order to feel fulfilled, that you need to be taking care of yourself. But if you're not a morning person, remember, you also have the evenings. Make sure that you take time for yourself and turning inwards and kind of shutting everything out. Even though you have everything going on, remember that even a 2-minute forward fold at the end of your day before you crawl into bed is going to do wonders for your brain. Speaking of wonders for your brain, that sleep stuff is really good for you. I know that there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, but the best thing you can do for your brain is allow it to sleep and heal. Some people do 7, some people do 8, some people do 9. I think the most important part is you're honoring a routine that helps you feel really productive. If you have a newborn baby or you have a small child, this is your yoga practice. It's trying to get to sleep. It's just like a fading thing in your world, but whatever you can do. Because if you can't always sleep, a great way to rest your brain is through meditation. Meditation is medication. And I'm like the worst person about sitting still. I've got so much energy, but I do feel like, taking even 2 minutes a day, whenever you can. There's lots of great assistive devices out there, the Calm app or Simple Habits, or even listening to a lot of the aquariums have, they're different creatures and they listen. It's just like there's lots of stuff out there to help just to keep the mind busy while you're being calm. So now I want to just focus our attention on what the company needs to do. And if you're a leader within the company, what's important for you to do. So as an employee, that you're really, it's your job to take care of yourself, but it's also important for your company to provide a place where it creates more harmony to work remote. And a lot of people are being thrown right into this. So first off, culture is clutch. It is something that when you folks, it really comes down to living your values. And so many people right now are really focusing on making sure that their people are okay and their staff are okay and that they have the appropriate support. I'm sure like I've been on a Zoom call where there's been this guy talking and his daughter's brushing his hair the entire time, right? Because they have a culture of that's okay because we are in uncharted territories. So creating a culture where people can really connect is so important. At Canopy, we really live our values. And the way that we just not only operationalized our values is that we have Slack, and one of our values is to have an attitude of, or like to express gratitude daily. So we have a thanks chat. And then thanks, they can go ahead and they can give each other thanks for stuff that they're working on. And what we love is there's a little tool called Hey Taco. So if you see all these little tacos everybody's getting given, it's because we implemented a tool. It's called Hey Taco. And what it does is it gives everybody 5 virtual tacos every day. And what they do is they give away their tacos with the hashtag of the value. So we really value human connection, which is the hashtag better together. Or we have a culture of accountability, hashtag own it. So, as people then have learned to really operationalize our values, that's created a sense of connection and it's created something to, you don't always get to see each other when you work remote. So it's fun seeing what other people are winning and what they're doing. I think it's also really important to know your why. If you work for an organization and you really understand the purpose and the cause and what they're doing, there's just a better sense of purpose into working remote and creating a culture. At Canopy, what we do is we focus on continuous improvement of the company itself, of ourselves, of our client work, of the community at large. And for us, it's really about like helping and supporting humans in every way. My bigger why is I want to go build tree houses in Costa Rica. So I love tree houses, but on the general, it really is I want to create a place where we can create impactful futures for our staff and our clients. It's also really important as a leader to lead with radical candor. So in this remote world, that is so important that we have what we call hashtag real talk. That we have honest conversations. It's a lot easier to do what we call zigzagging remote because you don't, you can kind of like, we have a video first culture. Everybody should be dressed. Remember, wear those pants, wear that skirt, be ready on camera from the moment you start your workday. Be able to have clear conversations. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, also love her. She does lots of work on vulnerability, but clear is kind. If you're managing really bright millennials, Gen Zs, whoever else, we can smell the BS when you serve us the sandwich. The good, bad, good. What that does is it actually ends up kind of tainting it. So what you want to do is, like in Radical Candor, as a leader in this time, is to have kind of that bounded optimism, that clarity around what's going on. If you do the bad, good, bad, or sorry, good, bad, good, every time you give good feedback, they're going to be expecting something bad to follow. We're Pavlovian, right? We know that. We're conditioned. So it's super important, I believe, in a remote culture that if something's going on, you talk about it. You have an honest conversation, because if it brews, it can be really toxic. Leading on that real-time feedback, it is something that I am a strong believer of, meeting with your team members, structured once a quarter to talk about how you're doing, and then to meet one-on-ones once a week or once a month, depending on your workflow together. And a one-on-one is just simply when you have a chance to connect about how you're doing. You know, I know your wife was having these challenges last time. Did she get the support? You know, just connecting as a human. And that one-on-one creates connection between the manager and the human to be human together. And they know that once a quarter, they're going to sit down and look at, like, hey, what did you do last quarter that was really successful? Because I really strongly believe in a remote culture, you have to lead with Radical Candor and have real-time feedback, that when you sit down once a quarter, it should be positive facing. Brilliant people cannot do anything about the past. So if you're teaching them in real time what needs to change, when you sit down at their quarterly, you go, how did that change impact your day to day? How are you adjusting to some of the recommendations we've worked on together? And it should be a progress report. How's it going? Because if there was still problems along the way, you should have been talking to them along the way. And so when we get to that quarterly meeting, it's about then saying, okay, what are we going to accomplish together this quarter? And creating a plan. Brilliant people want to contribute. And the one thing about knowledge workers is that, yes, you can give us lots of raises and so forth, but what we actually need is meaning. We need meaning in our work to stay. And when we feel like we're part of the solution and part of the picture, that creates meaning. Because it really is about collaborative leadership. It's about you need to create the space so people feel free to be able to speak up. They feel free to challenge the boss. That open door policy goes very, very far. It only goes very far, and very, very, very few people are actually willing to just reach out to me and be like, hey, I think that was wrong. But you want to create space. So if you are a leader, you are going to them. You are reaching out to them. Don't create this open door policy and expect them to walk through it. Create an open door policy and you walk through it. You ping them on Slack on a Monday morning and says, hey, how was your weekend? You ping them on a Friday afternoon. You got any plans going on? As a manager, it's so important to be a human and really create the capacity to listen, to ask questions, to check up on stuff. I have almost 50 employees. I have a spreadsheet of this stuff because I can't remember. So it's okay to document stuff and be like, okay, yeah, that person's kid's name is this, and they had this thing. Because once you get to a volume, if you have a lot of things, it's a normal human thing. But it sure means a lot, because it will sink in that you're like, oh yeah, that one has this, and and it just creates and it gains trust on the right level. Because in the end, we're all humans connecting with humans. As a boss, as a leader, as a human, as a friend. And it's finding ways to connect with each other. So the water cooler type experience in a virtual thing, it happens on Zoom, it happens on Slack, it happens in tools. One of the tools we really like is a tool called Know Your Team. I think it's called Know Your Company. Now it's Know Your Team. But what it does is it's another tool we use, like Hey Taco. This one here gives 3 questions a week. One is a weekly heartbeat, which is every Monday. It's like, how was your weekend? Right? That's a normal, you walk into the office and everyone's like, how was your weekend? How's your weekend? Right? We don't have that. So we have a daily Monday question that goes up, how was your weekend? And then the Tuesday morning, it pops up as a little email or as a little Slack message. And you get to kind of like see what people did for the weekend. So you get to know each other better without, you know, having a bunch of extra noise. Another question is that we have these social questions where the staff contribute their questions, where they want to get to know each other. Like the recent one was, what's the song that's in your ear? What's the earworm? Is that what they call it? Yeah, like what's the earworm, right? And, you know, they put all their little Slack messages. Well, you know, some of them is like, we ask serious questions, like how can we better support you during these times? Or what do you think of the new organizational chart? And they have the ability to send just to me in HR, or they can blast out to the entire company. Bonus, as a manager, when you're like, I'm having this one-on-one, you can kind of go in there and be like, oh, they like burritos more than they like tacos. I didn't know about that. Another tool that I didn't demonstrate here is a tool that we call Donut. And Donut is essentially a Slack app that pairs people randomly. And every 2 weeks you get paired with another person, a canopy, and then the app encourages you to have coffee and donuts. So we meet, we have a little chat, it creates cross-departmental, and that has been a really fun way to connect to people that don't really work together very often. You also want to encourage good work ethic. I think there is something that I learned, and because a lot of you probably have been told this your entire life, it's scary to learn this, and I learned this, is that you want to avoid telling people they're smart. You want to encourage people for their good work. Because when you encourage someone for their good work, and if they fail, all they know is they learn that they need to work harder. If you tell someone that they're smart and they fail, they think they're dumb. I was told as a kid I was smart, and I was like, oh, that's why I had such a hard time when I failed the first time, right? And it's so true, because you think it's you. Because you're just a little brilliant mind trying to get out there and do your best in the world. So as a leader, it's so important for you folks to encourage good work ethic, to encourage people to, did they put in a fair day's work? Did they say they were going to do, what they said they'd do? Did they do it? Do they respect their work, their customers, their coworkers? Are they fundamentally a good person? That's good work ethic. Praising people for working on the weekend? No, don't do that. Asking people to you know, go the extra mile if you haven't gone the extra mile yourself? No. It's about good work ethic, and are people putting in a good day's work? You will notice that when you work from home, you work probably faster, more efficiently. You don't, I love all your staff, but you're probably like, wow, it's so quiet. I actually get so much done. The reality is that as most of our work from home people is they work too much. They need to stop. So it's so important, I find, as leaders to say, hey, I noticed you're at 40 hours and you're still on, and I know you had a big push this weekend. I need you to do a stop and drop. Oh, I just need to do this thing. Okay, can you just do that thing, then leave? Yeah? Okay, good. Okay, you know, really making sure that your people, if they need some flex time right now, because maybe their children are all over them during the day and they actually need 2 or 3 hours at night, to give them the tools that they need to do their work outside of hours without pinging everybody. Set them up for success. If they need flex hours, don't penalize them. But it's so interesting that, you know, when you do have this remote culture, you need to pretend, you need to over communicate. And what that means is kind of, do you remember when you had your first boyfriend or first girlfriend or first other, and it was like, you're always on the phone with them. Oh, I'll call you in the morning. Oh yeah, I'll text you right when I get out, you know? And then we get so busy and we're in a relationship and we're like, you know, like we actually have to go back to those sweet days. And we really have to like remember that our word on text and our words, they can come off sharp. They can come off intense, and we don't even mean it. So it really is about figuring out how do we make sure we communicate very holistically and over communicate. I'm the notorious person for speaking too fast and not repeating myself. But definitely it's one of those things that my managers are totally cool with calling me on it. Hey, you need to slow down. You need to report, because I trust they're gonna give me good feedback. And remember, that recognizing good work, you want to do that in public. You want to, employees that are consistently and meaningfully recognized at work are 11 times more likely to spend their entire career with a company. And when you do have to give negative feedback, never do that in public. Always do it one-on-one. The last thing we need to do is publicly shame people in a space, because it's usually often an honest mistake. We're really big fans of starting every meeting on a positive note, no matter how stressful it is. And this time has been a little bit trying to come up with like, let's celebrate a win, but it's true. And even if it is like, I got through today without totally losing my brain, or, you know, I managed to put in 15 minutes of reading amongst the 5 hours of Paw Patrol or whatever's happening over there. All of that's okay. But the point is when you start with celebrating a win, it really frames the rest of the conversation in that positive light. And we also want to throw some tantrums. It's so important in a culture where you are working with a bunch of intelligent people, is that just running around and being like, everything's fine, everything's okay. That doesn't actually breed trust. What we really want to do is to create a culture of openness. So on Thursdays, Scrum is called Tantrum Thursdays. And what that does, it allows a space for the team members to come to the table and share something that was hard or frustrating. It's essentially sharing failure openly. They'll feel more comfortable collaborating and seeking ideas from one another. Because again, it's not everybody is equal. It's about how hard we're going to work together. So folks, it has very much been a pleasure to speak to you today. It is time to be calm and happy at work. I want to thank you so much. If you do want more help or want anything else, you're welcome to reach out to me. That's my email, bit.ly/, I'll put it in the chat here. Let me just put it here. You can just book a meeting. Oh, look at this, it's moving around with us at any time. And I will, when I send out this, I'll send a list to all the tools. But we use the Donut app, and we also use what we call Know Your Team, and we also use Hey Taco. I think that's all. Yeah, so we have about 50 minutes for Q&A. So I will stop sharing now, and I really want to thank everybody for joining. We have 53 people here. That is so fun. That is so rad. This is so cool that we're doing this totally virtual. I'm really honored to be at to work with you folks on this. So.
Thank you so much, Anne. I'm moderating here. It looks like Tori Lewis has her hand up. Tori, you want to have a question that you throw up?
Hi. Yeah. So Anne, I'm curious, because your team is sort of remote first, and you know, there are a lot of folks that are traditionally work from home, so this isn't quite as big of a change for them. But how do you deal with clients who perhaps have not had that remote culture that all of a sudden are, and making sure that you're still maintaining communication when your clients aren't in one room together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a couple of clients that get worried about, oh, you're totally virtual. Like, how is that going to work? So what we do is some of our clients, they want to organize an in-person kickoff. We actually say, no, we're going to do our cook-off totally virtual, and then we'll do remote, or then we'll do in person. So we try to get them going right out of the gate. And what it has been is helping them with understanding that it's probably best that everybody takes their headset and sits at their desk. Some of them want to get in around a conference call table, and that's fine too. What we do like to find is that with remote meetings is participation. So starting with the win from every single person, they have to participate. And at first they're like, you know, and it's about coaching them. But we find a lot of it is just giving them the tools. And sometimes our project lead on that side is kind of like train the trainer and have a conversation with them. But it has been interesting watching some of our folks in higher ed get on full Zoom and they go, oh, I can see everybody. Oh, I can actually hear what everybody's saying. So I think this is going to revolutionize the way that we teach and we work together. Thank you so much, everyone.
Looks like we have another question from Zubin. Zubin, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question for Anne?
Can't hear you if you're talking, but you had a question about contractors, like how we integrate them, or?
Doesn't sound like.
Huh. Well, I can let you know that contractors, what we do is it's for the general, when we do have a contractor join us, is that we have an onboarding checklist for all of our new employees that come on to Canopy. And there's a couple of things I didn't cover in this session that I covered in my last session that I can send out an email to. But a lot of that is like creating really solid onboarding materials. So having a place that can talk about our values and our tacos and our etiquette for Slack, our etiquette for video calls, our etiquette and making sure we have what we call a communications charter. For people that are really intense to work with, the CEO, I have what I call the Book of Anne, which is all my little quirks and works and do about me. Like I work East Coast hours and live in San Francisco. So if you want to get ahead of me, you better do what you got to do the night before, because I am up and working at 5 a.m. I'm done at like 3 p.m. Don't worry, don't worry. But so with that, when we have a contractor, they actually have some dedicated billable time to Canopy to go through the Canopy onboarding checklist. And they essentially come into the Canopy, you know, X%. So in Slack, you can have like a single channel guest. So they'll have what we call a land. Every employee at Canopy Studios has a Slack land. And a Slack land essentially is helping so that, let's say, Tommy and Shiraz and Anne and Christy, they each have a land that has all their managers. So if a manager needs to ask one thing of that person that might interrupt their already scheduled programming, they do that in their land to coordinate it with that one person, but so all the managers have visibility to the ask. So a contractor also has a land. So if, you know, Sandy, the designer, is a contractor and she's playing with us in that space, she'll have a land, she'll have onboarded, she'll essentially have drank in the Canopy Kool-Aid about how we communicate and how we work together. And then we hold each other accountable. So over the first 2 weeks is that they have a, you know, onboarding help. So I hope that answers the questions about contracting. It sounds like it.
Zubin did say in the chat that you were answering the questions. So
cool.
Thank you. Anyone else other questions? I just have some feedback. This is John Vicar from Stanford Web Services, and we have a number of remote employees and have had for a number of years. We're not fully remote, but we are now. And I think that the real takeaway for me from this is that your tips and tricks are all relevant to regardless whether or not you're remote or whether you're all in the same office. It's about culture, and it's about creating productivity and the space for workers to do their best work. So I really appreciated that aspect of it.
For sure. We've gotten so many demands on our time. And the one thing that like I miss about the office is the transition time. You know, right now it's like meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting because you don't actually have to get up and move. Like that's actually not very helpful because you have no time to digest, no time to take notes, no time to follow up. And by the end of the day, you've had 8 hours, you've had 6.5 hours of meetings. You're just so fried, you don't even know what happened. So I highly encourage just to book yourself 30 minutes between meetings. Even 15, you know, book a 45-minute, book 15, and then make that 15 minutes a place. Because again, those closing loops is part of just the reducing the mental noise. And again, that goes whether you're in an office or out of an office, the more loops that you can close. And just so you folks know, like one of the great ways to is just starting by turning off notifications. Turn off the Slack noise. That ding every time. No, that's just it's built to be anxiety driven. So turn off the noises. I put a calendar in my once a month as I go through and I unsubscribe intentionally for about an hour once a month. because I get all excited and I'm on Instagram and, oh, I like that Ruggable thing. I'm going to get Ruggable. The next thing you know, I've got a Ruggable email coming every week. And, so I just go through once a month and I just unsubscribe, turn off notifications, delete apps, purge. So yeah, it's been really interesting because one of the things that we've created right now to extra assist is we're doing virtual games. So we have a virtual D&D night. So our dungeon master at work is coordinating this. There's a whole bunch of new people that have no idea what's going on. And that's really fun because that's really fun to give new people new life into what Dungeons and Dragons is, if you don't know what D&D is. And then we have other places where we have a book club where people are choosing a book to read, and then we're going to have conversation about it. We have a Ravelers and Crafters chat where people can share what they're crafting, and they can oh, I just painted the room, or I just built this fun thing. We also have a Friday friendly dev scrum. So every Friday at 10 a.m., the entire company we actually have 2 pods now that meet, and they just do your personal win for the week, a work win for the week, what you're doing, and then some random question, like what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Or, today was like, what's your number one, life hack to stay calm? So there's lots of ways. And I think the biggest thing is like trying to find ways that you can create connection online by leveraging the tools that we have. And that might just be like, we're now starting every Friday happy hour. So at 3:30 Pacific, which is late enough for the Pacificers and late enough for the East Coasters, there's a 3-hour window that someone's committed just to have a Slack room open or a channel open. So what is this? The team with an app on Slack. It's the Know Your Team. Oh, the Know Your Team and app on Slack. So the Know Your Team is an actual paid service. And what we do with Know Your Team, you pay $100 per employee once. So there's an initial investment if you're like a team of 20, it's like $2K. If you're a team of 500, it's going to be a lot more, and you're going to need to talk to purchasing. but on the general, if you have a nice team size, it's a really good tool. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll send out the link to the presentation I gave at DrupalCon a couple of years ago, because I think there's some good stuff that was really, kind of basic stuff that's really good. And then I'll send out this, and I'll send out some links to some of the tools. And then I definitely, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn and find me there. We do a lot of trainings as well on accessibility, and I'm leading another session here in 20 minutes about how to make your site last for 5 years. And then tomorrow, Amy June is going to be doing a session on looking under the hood of your site. So cool. This is so exciting that there's so many attendees. I'm really excited and honored that to have such a big group today. It's very timely for all of us working from home. Austin, Texas. How fun. Well, wonderful, everybody. I guess if there's no other questions, we can call it. Is there anybody else from the audience that has any other tips and tricks or anything they would love to share? Or that's totally fair too. It's totally fair too. It's a wild time out there, folks, and I'm definitely, grateful that this day and age we have the technology to make a lot of this happen. We have new mindsets. I know that, this is definitely going to revolutionize the way that we're going to see the world through this digital lens. Is going to amplify. So getting more tools and more resources out there so people know how to manage their energy through all of this and create balance, and making sure that, a simple forward fold, again, flush the brain, put the blood in there, let it go around, stand back up. 2 minutes of a forward fold is one of the best ways to refresh. Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you again so much. You have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy the rest of camp. We'll see you at various sessions, I'm sure. We will post the link right to the Stanford page. And if you do want a copy of this presentation, you're welcome to email me or LinkedIn me, and I can get you a copy, no problem. And that is, it's a really easy email too, Anna Canopy.
Folks, you can unmute to applaud. The deafening sound of silence is one of the weirdest things about doing a fully online
Isn't it?
camp. So
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming together. I really appreciate it. We'll see each other soon in person, I am sure. And until then, happy Drupaling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
thanks, Sam.
Bye.